So guys, they do say that college is the best years of your life, and definitely, when you look back at old age, you're gonna fall in love with your college experiences or just have a nice chuckle like, oh, college, college, college. It was a great time. And, that's not always the case really. And I'm also very happy to talk about some bad experiences that have happened to me in college because I remember a few years ago, and I've told the story in another video, where what happened was that I was just leaving like a bad review about college, like some just really inappropriate things that happened, like racism and just a lot. And there was also a streaking incident and a few other things. And then one of the professors actually responded back to me and said, like, you come off as a crybaby millennial. You also kind of come off as somebody who just needs an extra, booster, and I'm cheering for you to get a good job. I'm cheering for you to be successful, and it's all about me culture with millennials. And then he's also saying you received an excellent education. And one of the things that is my big pet peeve is that I hate when people actually say something like, you had a great experience, you received the excellent education, you have nothing to complain about, when they've actually not been through my shoes. Like, I remember like when I wrote an essay about my middle school experience in high school. Like, I went to Wagner Middle School, a lot of bullying, a lot of problems. It actually made the news because there was a gay teacher trying to sue the school for sexual harassment because he was being targeted for being gay. But I remember when I wrote an essay about that in high school, my dad would always proofread my work, and he would be like, you can't write this because you know what? Whenever he went to school, it was like nice and perfect, and he said like, it's your autistic brain making things up, which was a lie and manipulation. But there's a lot of people who actually are like, I'll speak for you. I'll say that you had a good experience when they've actually not been there. How many times have my dad seen the classroom brawls and other like violence that happened at Wagner Middle School, and he's seen none of that really. So you can't speak for somebody else's experience. Without further ado, I do want to do a video about the top 10 bad experiences that I've had at Johnson State College, which is now Northern Vermont University. The purpose of this is to bring attention, and the other purpose is to cause a change and a difference. So I will talk about this, and I do have my notes with me. That the first thing that I do want to talk about is that I did have a bunch of racist professors. So I've had professors use the word nigger, and I remember like one time I had like a professor use the word niggard, Niggard, which means stingy, but then he kind of said, oh, I forgot that there was a black man in the room. I also had that same professor, his name was Tony, and he was like saying things like, I remember one day I showed up late, and he's like, saying like, oh, well, black man, whatever. And we were talking about like psychological thrillers, and I said The Heart of Darkness, and then he said, what about Joseph Conrad's book, Nigger of the Narcissus? And then he looked at me in the class, he said, oh, I forgot that there was a black man in the room. There was this other professor, Dan Towner, and I remember like one time he quoted a passage of Huckleberry Finn, and he said like he used the word nigger in it. When he said the word nigger, he was looking at me with a grin, and then he left the classroom, and a lot of people were saying, oh, I think I know what that meant really. So I was called a nigger a bunch of times. I remember one time I made a controversial piece of artwork, and I think that her name was Margaret, this professor, and she was like saying, okay, since you're using bad symbolism or controversial symbolism, you know what, would you like it if I used the word nigger and artwork as well? And I also remember I had a professor named John, and I also made another controversial piece of artwork, recurring theme, and he said like, what would you do, how would you like it if I made artwork of black people hung by nooses? One time I felt uncomfortable accepting a scholarship, a bit of stage fright. He said like, I want to wring you by your neck. And I've been called nigger by many like students at that college, so it's not a good experience. But I also think that there's a couple of things that I have to say about this. That number one, you have to bring these issues up. Definitely if you're making something controversial, like a controversial piece of artwork, or you're talking about a controversial subject matter, and people say, oh, well, would you like it because you're black if this thing was said, that thing was said, this depiction was made? You have to sit down and have a discussion about it. And then you also have to say, okay, well, I see your side, I see my side, type of thing, really. But there's no excuse for professors using racial slurs. To add to that, I had many professors assume that I'm black. I'm actually mixed race. So it's also that thing, too, where when I say I'm biracial, you meet a lot of people say, no, you're an African American, you're black, right about being a black man. Worry about being a black man in Barack Obama's America. What does it mean for a black man like you to actually, exist or deal with the fact that Obama's now president? I also remember when Barack Obama became president, they served fried chicken, watermelon, and Kool-Aid at the school cafeteria. So, it did have a serious issue of racism. I should have brought more attention to those things. And I also will add that one time I was interviewed by the school newspaper. I said that I was mixed race or biracial, but they changed a lot of it. And they kind of made it that I was this, socially awkward African American because, again, they also have that thing too where you say you're biracial and everybody says, no, you're black because everybody wants the student to be the blackie, be the blackie of the group, type of thing, really. When somebody says that they're mixed race, you call them mixed race. It is offensive. It's the same thing as saying, somebody who's white and has red hair is automatically Irish, or somebody with white hair, or somebody who's white has a big pointy nose, he's automatically a Jew, or somebody who is Asian who has a bit of yellow, who has very white skin, that must mean that they're Japanese, or if they have golden skin, they must be Chinese. Or if they have a really big sex life and they have a tan, they must be Taiwanese, You don't stereotype people. If people tell you what their nationality is or their racial identity or how they identify, you stick with that. You don't change shit up. It's offensive. And it's very bad that people just didn't really correct that or advocate me or help me become a better writer where I talk about those issues, because clearly these things are being talked about now on other platforms. There was also the pumpkin murder incident. And the pumpkin murder incident was that, at the school cafeteria, they had a bunch of Halloween decorations, which became Thanksgiving decorations. So what happened was that there was this really big bridge above the school cafeteria. And what happened was somebody just threw a pumpkin off of it into the cafeteria. He nearly hit a girl and he almost hit a couple of people. And I was almost there too. So he could have killed somebody. And in response to that, he received just community service, help out in the cafeteria for a few hours, take away somebody's overtime. It is vandalism, but it's also, if you do something really, really, really dangerous like that, I think that a suspension or expulsion is more fair. But somebody nearly kills somebody by, through a method of manslaughter or being irresponsible or reckless vandalism or something that could seriously injure and it could lead to maiming. It could be an assault charge, and you're just giving them community service. That the punishment does not fit the crime in that. So there was a bunch of that type of keeping people with problems. There was also an issue with the cafeteria workers. I used to work at the school cafeteria, and there was this guy named Ron. I changed his name. I changed the name of everybody in this. But what happened with Ron was that he had mad PTSD. So if he heard like a bang and a clang, he would be like, oh, F, and be kicking and throwing things because he had PTSD from the Iraq war, really. But this guy's going around in public having these big flip outs, really. And I do understand that there's people with mental health issues. There's people with PTSD who need jobs and need treatment and need help. And then there's some people who just need a job and whatever. But if you're having somebody being public and kind of dangerous with that, why is this guy employed? If he puts everybody at safety, he was not a good person to work around. And I know that's hard, but you can't have a situation where you give somebody passes because they're being antisocial. For example, there was a kid on my campus who was autistic, and there was this girl doing nude modeling. So I remember how she was sitting down at the school cafeteria, and he walked up to her and said, you know what, aren't you the nude model that I drew in art class? And then she wanted to report it, and then he gave her a second chance, and then she gave him a second chance. But the point of it is that we can't live in a world of people with mental health issues being antisocial. There was another guy named Chris. He looked like Chris Benoit. I'll call him Chris. He had this big chow dog. It had to be a big 100 pounds. And he would keep the dog in the back of his pickup truck. But the dog would escape. He would be rolling around campus. There'd be stories of people throwing rocks at the dog. But it was always like that thing too, where his mentality was just, okay, I have this big beastly dog that growls at people, that charges at people, but people need to be like, oh, well, it's a sweet little dog. Oh, well, you don't understand it. What the hell, Chris? You don't do stuff like that because that is dangerous. It's not a dog park. And the other incident that happened at the school cafeteria was there was a guy that ran that was a chef. I'm gonna call him Bill. And what happened was that Bill wrote an article and he was criticizing students. He was talking about how they dressed it really skimpy and other things like that. There was also another story that Bill put his he was joking with a female student who was a cafeteria worker. So he's putting like his fingers on her throat and really like doing like practice choking. And it was kind of weird because he actually died like a few weeks after he got fired, really. So there was definitely some serious mental health issues. But again, you have somebody go that far. They even write a newspaper article, and that's being published in like the Basement Medicine. And they're saying some very, offensive things, and nobody proofreads it. And then also, too, there's reports, and it didn't get resolved until like a couple of times afterwards, that he's actually putting his fingers on a girl's throat and choking her. Wow, no, lack of initiative there. The other incident that I will say is, I've given you 4, but I also had my art teacher, Mary, and what happened with her was that she would do what some professors do, and a lot of professors are doing this nowadays, where they don't do any teaching. They'll tell everybody, you come up with a PowerPoint project, and you teach the class, you teach the art class. So I remember, one time she said, you know what, I got 10 years, so I don't have to care anymore about my job. She was also saying like things like, okay, Byron, you do these presentations, you take a long time, you might as well teach the class. Like always just being a little rude and just really, really cunty, almost. And a lot of professors do that where they're like, okay, I don't want to teach, or I have a personal project, like she's working towards her doctorate to make more money, not to actually learn more things about art history. It's just to make, money and be paid a little bit more. But you're having a bunch of students actually do your teaching. That's not right, really. And if a professor says anything like that, I've actually talked to many former professors, says anything like, I got tenure, I don't have to care about my job anymore, that's somebody that shouldn't be hired, really. Those are 5 incidences. I will have to do another video, but I'm going to leave a couple of bonuses. There was the wall climbing incident where there was a student that was putting his hands out and he was like climbing to the top of a building, really. And again, there are some public safety officers seeing that, which are student police officers and other people, and there's no consequences for that. You legitimately climb a building, you climb a college building, and you're not punished for that. There was also another incident of people setting off fireworks and trash cans outside buildings. Once again, no cops being called, no going into the building, finding out who did it, and people kind of knew who it was, really, and it fit the description, and they didn't check security cameras. So somebody, once again, does something that could explode a trash can and shatter things like a bomb, really. Oh, well, there's no punishment for you, really. So, that's not good. And I would also say that there's a couple of other like really big ones that would fit another like top 10 in a second video. But these were just kind of like the really, really major ones, and I think the point of this is that, like sometimes it's okay to just, talk to the principal, talk to the dean, and have a meeting, say, these are these issues. I feel like, there's not a lot of consequences for people. And sometimes what people tell you is, oh, well, you need to focus on yourself, you need to shut up, college is your best years, whatever, and that's not okay, really. If you are in a system of professors that don't care about their jobs, that's not all of them. Some professors don't only avidly say that, that's an issue. If you have, there's stories of assault by cafeteria workers on people, that's an issue. If you have, somebody who did a committed act of vandalism where they almost like could have killed somebody and they get community service and they have to work in a cafeteria for a few hours, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. And if you have students climbing buildings, what's going on there? So I do think that I'm happy to bring attention to these things. It's very unfortunate these things happen. I do understand that, when I went to college from 2006 to 2010, there was a boys will be boys attitude. We all make mistakes, keep people because we pay into the college. They're paying a lot of money, so maybe you need to kind of give them a pass. And at that time, there was a lot of still that, college is just the sex crazed. You're paying for a degree. It's about drinking and partying. and infinite chances, just like you saw in old movies. But nowadays, I think that there's a lot more reactionary stuff in colleges. So, a lot of things that have happened wouldn't have happened, so it's a cultural thing. But definitely, if somebody's doing behavior that's dangerous to the public, dangerous to themselves, and dangerous to other people, that needs to be handled appropriately. And if people don't care about their jobs and they avidly say that, or if they're just assigned to do projects, and they're assigned to teach a class, and they're just having students teach a class, that's egregious. And then the last part of it is there's no excuse for racism. And if somebody says that they're mixed race, they are mixed race. You do not say black, black, black. And clearly, even if you're trying to make a point by using the N-word or saying or even quoting a piece of literature, if it's really said to harass somebody or instigate somebody, or just to say it just to be mean or offensive, or to draw attention to yourself or shock value or whatever, that has to be addressed appropriately. I should have came forward about some of these things, but I was going through a lot of depression, and I got to a point where I was used to racism. It's important that I said something now than never. But also, the people who've caused problems, mutual accountability, I hold them accountable as well.